In Heidelberg, Germany, Black Manta makes his way through the blocky building that is the United States Army Center. We find the dead bodies of employees in the halls, their blood splashed against the walls. Manta stops at a sign that's written in German. He stabs the seal of clarity, stolen last episode from Kahina, into the sign. The writing suddenly changes to English, saying psychiatric hospital. Wow, the seal of clarity can clarify anything, huh? We cut to a man sitting alone in his room. The room is clean and orderly, the bed nicely made. The man is dressed in a dark green shirt, khaki pants, and he has 13 dog tags hanging around his neck. He's hunched over a small desk, and a desk lamp washes his face out. We can make out no details save for some stubble on his chin, short dark hair, and a light brown skin tone. The man is on the phone. It rings a few times before someone picks up. They ask, "Who is this?" And there's no reply. They tell him to stop calling, please, just leave us alone. And then the man hangs up. As this is happening, we get several panels that show photos tacked to a corkboard above the bed. They're mostly of families, and all of them of soldiers. "Just one more," he says. "One more tonight, and that'll be all." A creaking floorboard gives him pause, and suddenly thin cord wraps around his neck. Black Manta pulls back, lifting the man off of his seat. "No, Torres," he says. "No more calls." As Torres struggles against the wire, Manta keeps talking. He assumes that Torres is still haunted by their memories, still living his sad, empty life, too scared to tear himself away from it. Well, he can help Torres. He can free him from it. But Torres is a soldier, and he doesn't surrender. His eye flashes red, and he orders, "Fall in." Ghostly images of wounded soldiers pour into Torres's body, empowering him. He bucks, throwing Manta over himself. Quickly, he grabs a small lockbox located under his bed, and he snaps on his golden manacles. Before he can get out the second one, a small harpoon sticks into his shoulder. Manta greets him now as prisoner, and says that the manacles are his now. Prisoner reaches under his pillow and draws a pistol. A ghostly sniper appears around him as prisoner aims, and he shoots Manta in the center of his chest. A ghostly medic now appears behind prisoner as he pulls out the jagged harpoon and picks up the other manacle. Manta, whose costume is bulletproof, gets back on his feet. "A gun with one bullet?" he asks. "Why even bother fighting me?" Prisoner pulls the burlap sack that he wears over his head. "Because you can't have these," he says, holding up the manacles. Then he jumps out of the window. Manta follows. "You can run, but you can't hide," he says. "None of you can." My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 26.6 of Aquaman, Sins of Youth. The action of this opening sequence is dope. The creative team runs this scene as if it's a movie with dramatic heavy shadows and tense pauses in the build-up. We know that Black Manta is coming for Torres, and yet we see Torres sitting at his desk in what feels like a nightly routine, blissfully unaware. Until the actual attack happens anyways. The fighting itself is fine, it's all pretty solid, and I was struck by how much this opening echoed the opening of issue 8 when Black Manta hunted Kahina. That scene has much the same tone as this one. They're both heavy with shadows, lots of long, wide panels, and an impending sense of dread as Black Manta closes in on his prey. Kahina's scene had a lot of tension because we weren't sure how it was going to go down, but now having experienced that scene, Prisoners has tension because we know that he could die here. Kahina was absolutely fridged in order to demonstrate how skilled a hunter and combatant Black Manta is, but her death now serves another purpose. To remind us that none of the others are safe in this story. Aquaman is the biggest, most established name in this book, with Mera maybe a close second at this point. Hell, in the canon, I would even think that Black Manta is probably more notable than Mera is. But the others? These folks are all new, and that means that the audience isn't as invested in their stories already. If one of them dies, hell, if many of them died, if all of them died, sure, we'll mourn their potential. But the DC universe will keep on publishing, and Aquaman will still, at the end of the day, have his own title. I was really caught off guard, having said all of that my own personal expectation for this scene was that Prisoner would survive. Like, as soon as things started, I was like, Prisoner's going to be fine. Is that because my subconscious mind remembers this arc while my conscious mind does not? Is it the expectation that the good guys always win and always escape the bad guy and live to fight another day because ultimately they're going to win at the end of the story? Is it internalized sexism in that I am used to American comic books killing off female characters in order to prove a point, but that rarely happens with male ones? I don't think that this is a storytelling failure on Jeff Johns' part, as, come on, I just argued that the scene has tension, and I feel like it does. All of the pieces for a really good and executed scene are there. They just didn't really connect with me for Prisoner in this scene, and I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe it's just me, maybe this totally worked for somebody else, but I think that my expectations and my experience reading as many comics as I have kind of just led me to go, Prisoner's going to be safe. Doesn't really matter. He's going to be fine. Ugh. Anyway, despite all of that, the main thrust of this scene is to give us some more information about Prisoner of War, aka Torres. We now know that he is a former soldier. We know that he is haunted both metaphorically and literally by the ghosts of his comrades. We see this manifest in whatever his powers are and how he lives his life. First off, Torres lives in a psychiatric military hospital. That establishes that whatever is up with him, it's clearly serious enough that he can't live a normal life, or even a superheroic life. You know, a character like Wolverine has a troubled past, deadly powers, and he's got memory issues all day, and he still runs around fighting crime in yellow spandex, living in the X-Mansion, and he has friends and lovers and teammates, and he still chooses to enjoy life as much as he can in whatever way he can. In comparison, Prisoner is not running around in a colorful outfit. He's still dressed in army clothing. He isn't fighting supervillains, punching people with other superpowered individuals like a team. He has isolated himself to a building that helps take care of him. Prisoner's burden, whatever it is, clearly wears at him. Instead of making new friends and moving on with his life, Prisoner gazes at the pictures of the soldiers that he knew and who probably died. He can't forget them. He won't forget them. And that has caused him to no longer fit in with the rest of society, or even the broader superheroic society of the DC universe. I'm guessing that this phone call routine that we saw here is what we saw with Dr. Shin back in issue 7 as well. Remember, just before Arthur and Mera showed up, Shin got a phone call in that issue. Whoever was on the other end didn't speak, they didn't say anything, they just hung up after Shin spoke. We see Prisoner do the same thing here, to who I am guessing is a family member of one of his comrades. So maybe these family members or friends have, in Prisoner's mind, moved on from their loss, but because he can't move on, he's choosing to force them to remember, to suffer as he does. He clearly wants, on some level, to leave this suffering behind. The gun with one bullet under his pillow is a potential way out for Prisoner, and it also explains why Manta offered to free him when he attacked. This little detail also shows how much Manta has studied the others. He knows that Prisoner wants peace, and in his own way he's willing to give it to him. This adds a really unnerving element to Prisoner. It also plays with the idea of a soldier coming back from war with PTSD, haunted by their actions and the deaths of their comrades, but in a much more comic-ified way. It's not quite what I would call fun, but I do think it's an interesting idea. As part of that idea, we see that Prisoner is able to call upon the dead? I would guess, based on the artwork, that Torres is tapping into the knowledge and skills of the soldiers that he summons. So when he chucks Manta over his shoulder, that is a throw that a particular soldier knew. When he pulls the harpoon out, that field medic's knowledge was inside a prisoner's head, guiding him and letting him know how to handle the wound. If my assumption is correct, and Prisoner is sharing knowledge with these soldiers, that might also explain why he is so haunted by their lives. Maybe Prisoner actually sees all of their memories, just not what he is using at the moment, as those people experience them in the moment that he taps into them. So when he's using their ghosts in a combat situation, his own identity would fall away for a moment, and maybe he becomes that soldier. He is literally a prisoner of war, trapped in these terrible experiences and deaths thanks to whatever his powers are. Now, does this have something to do with the golden manacles? I can't quite tell yet. We know that Arthur's superpowers exist without the trident. We know that Yawara can command her jaguar and teleport, but the teleporting is thanks to her golden bauble, the globe of transportation. Is the telepathic stuff connected to it too? Does the prisoner summon these ghosts because of the manacles? Or could he always summon these ghosts and the manacles are just an additional thing on top of it? Hopefully we'll find out. Wow, that was a lot to talk about for an opening scene. Let's get moving. Arthur and Yawara fight off the mercenaries that attacked them at the end of last issue. While doing so, Yawara's jaguar is shot. That is... Oh, you don't kill the dog. You don't kill jaguars. Oh, come on, man. So Yawara summons 2 new jaguars to finish off the guy who did it. Arthur tries to stop her, arguing that they shouldn't kill these men. They kill only when they don't have a choice, lady. But it's already too late. The animals have killed the man. And Yawara stares at Arthur. This fight, the blood, the heat. Does he remember? He spins around, grabbing one of her hands by the wrist. "I'm taken," Arthur says. And oh, wow. I legit didn't think that these two were an item in the past. Like, even having read these comics before, that is a detail that completely slipped my mind. Obviously, because Jeff Johns is not making it a big deal. Wow. Anyway, Yawara doesn't like this change in him. She is specifically referring to his new namby-pamby, "we only kill when we have to" thing. But I do think that she also means his faithfulness to Mera. Arthur doesn't care what she thinks, and they don't have time for a one-sided fling right now. The threat has been confirmed. Black Manta killed Kahina. They need to find the others. Arthur already contacted Vostok through his Justice League communicator. If he responds, it'll probably take him like 8 or 9 hours before he can even show up, though. Turns out, Vostok lives on the moon. We are told that he was psychologically engineered to prefer the isolation of space. With the golden Atlantean helmet on, he doesn't need to breathe, eat, or sleep, which is, wow, like, that's crazy. Like, that's such a simple superpower, but it's also so perfect for Vostok. Completely nonplussed by the fact that Vostok is living on the moon, Yawara then asks about the operative. Arthur is confident that he will find them, like he always does. That leaves one other to find. Prisoner. And of course we then transition to Prisoner for a little bit as he continues to flee Black Manta, and that is a nicely done transition, Jeff Johns. Flooping hell, I love a nice transition that fits the narrative and moves the story along. It's just so nice to see, and it's economic storytelling, and it's well executed. This is one of those little things that for whatever reason I'm an absolute nerd on. I love these kinds of moments in comic books, in storytelling in general, but really in comic books. It's just, it flows so nicely. Before we move on, let's take a look at a few things that just happened in that scene with Arthur and Yawara. We had a few tidbits get dropped on us, including the fact that Yawara appears to be able to talk to any jungle life, not just her one jaguar specifically. Still no explanation as to why or how she can do it, but she can do it. Secondly, her and Arthur were a thing. Wow. I didn't think either of them had it in them. But Yawara's dialogue definitely indicates that it was a passion thing more than it was a love thing. They would get their blood all hot and bothered going on adventures together and then calm down with each other. That definitely adds a layer of jealousy and possessiveness to Yawara's first appearance when we saw her fight Mera. Maybe Yawara was so ready to fight and was so dismissive of her because she honestly didn't know that Arthur was in a committed relationship now. Or maybe Yawara just didn't care. She is certainly an attractive woman who is confident, maybe she's a little bit brash and arrogant, and she certainly seems strong-willed. If it came down to a competition for Arthur's interest, I don't think that Yawara is the type of woman who would back down in that contest to honor Mera's feelings. I think she's going all out. This new bit of personal detail is super interesting to me because I would not have thought to describe Arthur as a man of passions. But if he and Yawara were in these situations and they just kind of did things together because it felt right in the moment, I do think that kind of fits what we've seen of his character in these past couple issues. Arthur is quiet and thoughtful one moment, and then when he gets ticked off, he becomes angry really quickly. We've seen him believe in doing the right thing, regardless of what anyone else thinks, which I think of as a sign of passion. And we have seen him break down at the death of his father, like really break down, like screw humanity, I'm out of here break down. Maybe the reason that Arthur feels so tightly wound now that he's a bit more of an adult is because he already did the wild, youthful thing, and he has learned that it is in his best interests to keep those passions under control. That's interesting. We also learn a tiny bit about Vostok here, like just a snack of a fact, which was that he was engineered. And given that he is Russian, I'm going to guess that he was made as part of the Russian space program, which is a neat idea. We have seen a lot of characters in comic books come out of the United States trying to create human weapons throughout comic book history, probably most famously a character like Wolverine or Captain America. The idea that Russia would be doing the same thing makes perfect sense, and Vostok's a really neat example of that idea. So we only get one panel of Prisoner on the run through the streets of Heidelberg during that transition. I just wanted to include the transition because I liked it so much. Johns is just letting us know that Prisoner's still out there. We're just checking in with him. As the issue goes on, he will work more and more of Prisoner's situation into the ongoing narrative until Arthur and Yawara's narrative dovetails into it really nicely. After that single panel, we return to Shin and Mera. Dr. Shin is reluctant to tell her about his past, and instead he tries to focus on the Atlantean A-glyph that we've been poking around with for a couple issues. But Mera won't be dissuaded, and she slams him into his own fridge. And so Shin starts talking. When he was a younger man, Tom Curry saved his life when a deep-sea diving expedition that he was on went wrong. Tom later contacted Shin in regards to Arthur and his strange developing powers. The pair were getting nervous, but Shin was happy to help. After all, he owed Tom his life. Shin taught Arthur how to use his powers, and Tom told Shin about how he got them. About his mom, about Atlantis, about how she was forced to leave them both. Tom never saw Arthur's mother again, but at least he still had Arthur. For Shin, the boy was the discovery of a lifetime. He wanted to take the information about Arthur to the public, but Tom refused. He took everything that was connected to Arthur from Shin's lab and then cut off contact with the doctor. Shin couldn't let this stand. He had spent years helping the pair of them. Shouldn't he get something in exchange? He just wanted recognition for the work that he had done. So he exposed them to the public. No one really believed Shin, though. Sure, the tabloids ate it up, and the conspiracy theorists loved it. To the scientific world at large, though, Dr. Shin became a joke. He lost his job, he lost his credibility, he lost Tom and Arthur, who he calls his only friends. So Dr. Shin found a treasure hunter. This guy was supposed to have fought off a whole group of pirates that were trying to take his ship. Shin figured that someone as skilled as that could handle fighting Tom and Arthur, and all Shin needed was like a sample of blood, just something to prove his claims that Arthur was in fact Atlantean. And so Black Manta attacked Arthur. Tom defended his son and had a heart attack. He survived the heart attack, but 3 days later Tom did die in the hospital. Shin is adamant about this point. It wasn't Black Manta who killed Tom. It was the heart attack. In a fit of rage, Arthur went to kill Black Manta, and he accidentally killed Manta's father instead. As Shin tells us this backstory, the story is intercut with panels of prisoners still fleeing from Manta. The hunter closes in with every panel, moving us through the pouring rain with an ease and determination. He only stops because there is a sudden flash of golden light, and Aquaman appears before him. And he does not look happy. The mysterious connections between Aquaman, Shin, and Black Manta are now revealed. And it's kind of, like, underwhelming. I got to this point and I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, sure, that makes sense. And I have written a whole bunch of paragraphs exploring how and why this moment does not really work for me emotionally, and I still have yet to come to a satisfying conclusion. I'm all over the place on it, so I'm just not going to give you a conclusion yet. I'm going to wait until this arc is over. I'm hoping some distance from this scene will help me maybe see the forest and the trees, and I'll have a better idea why I feel how I feel here. Like, legit, I have cut maybe a dozen or so paragraphs going on weird tangents about why this reveal didn't hit, and none of them seem quite right to me at this point. They're all close, but they're just not right at the same time. So I'll circle back to this reveal later on when hopefully I have a little bit more insight. Otherwise, this back half of the issue is fine. Johns finally connects all of the dots that he has been laying out throughout the entire series. Arthur's connections to Shin, why he hates Shin and considers him someone who, quote, tried to kill him, end quote. We now know why the tabloids were harassing Arthur. We know why Arthur abandoned the surface world. We know why Shin couldn't get close to him in order to apologize. And we now know why Black Manta is hunting the others. At least vaguely. We know that he wants some revenge. The real thing of note for me in this scene is Shin's refusal to accept responsibility for Tom's death. He argues that Tom's death was an accident. It was a natural cause. It was the damage done by a heart attack. Manta didn't kill him. But I also think that's some really weaselly thinking. Tom wouldn't have had that heart attack if Black Manta hadn't attacked Arthur. And Manta wouldn't have attacked if Shin hadn't sicked him on the Currys. There is a clear line of guilt that leads back from Dr. Stephen Shin to Black Manta and Tom Curry's death. And yet, Dr. Shin doesn't believe it. I suppose if you were Dr. Shin, you could make an argument that Tom put Shin in that position. I don't know if Shin spent any money studying Arthur, but I am sure that the process took time and effort. What started out as a way to pay back the man who saved his life just became a job. And how long would Shin have to work to pay Tom back for what he did anyways? How long do you need to have this relationship and get nothing from it, knowing that Tom Curry had saved your life at some point? Shouldn't Shin get something for all of his hard work? It doesn't quite feel right to villainize Dr. Shin for wanting recognition, for wanting recompense, for wanting all of that work to mean something to the world. But he refers to Tom and Arthur as his only friends. Friends that he wouldn't have had if he hadn't been doing that work. In a really sappy way, it almost sounds like Dr. Shin was repaid in friendship. It just wasn't good enough for him. Also, Shin's desire for recognition and money does not justify hiring someone to attack Arthur. Sure, Arthur was superpowered, even back then, so Shin was probably confident that Manta couldn't really hurt him anyways, but that's still a fluked up thing to do. Moving on. Issue 10 then takes us a step aside. We finally get to meet the Operative, dressed in his black and off-white spy outfit. His face is totally covered by a black mask with rectangular green goggles over his eyes. A small Roman-style one rests in the center of his forehead as he crawls through a ventilation shaft. A voice on his radio warns him, "They know you're here." "Don't rush me," the operative says, "and keep quiet. When I need you, you'll know it." The radio goes quiet. The operative cuts through the vent and drops to the floor. Inside of Black Manta's headquarters, all kinds of sea memorabilia lay about the room. Former iterations of Manta's dive suit are on display or lay about as well. A computer setup displays a map of the world with red dots marking the location of each of the others. The operative looks over it all. "How did you find us?" he mutters. The operative rifles through Manta's computer, but finds nothing. "That's smart," he says. "I wouldn't trust anyone else either." The operative then moves to a small safe that's nearby. He pulls out a small golden object from a pouch at his belt. Only by using it do I realize that this is some kind of Atlantean key. A golden light suffuses the safe when he taps it on. Open sesame. With a clank, the safe swings open. But the operative only has a moment to look at the paper files within. 3 men, who are dropped like knockoffs of Black Manta, attack him. The operative smashes a shark jaw into one of them before then shooting them in the face. And then, the operative is shot. It's in his left side, and he does return fire, killing the man who shot him, but he is wounded. The operative then bolts, smashing through a wall, and out of a high-rise window. "All right," he calls over the radio, "now I need you." He fires out a line of cable, and an airplane shoots by, snagging the cable. "Prepare to board the living room," the voice on the radio says. Inside of the plane, the interior is made up like a British manor. Tall bookcases line the walls. Finely decorated carpets cover the floor. Beautiful lamps rest on wooden tables, finely upholstered chairs sit nearby. All of which is getting bled on by the operative as he moves through the space. He sinks into a chair and glances at a photograph of an older man with white hair and one younger man with brown. A father and son, perhaps, or a grandfather and a grown grandchild. Is that the operative, we think, looking at the younger man? Well, he pulls off his mask and reveals an older, weathered face. From over his shoulder, a voice says that Grandpa's getting too old for this. We then see the young man from the photo, Aaron, asking his grandfather when he's going to retire. That suit isn't going to keep you moving forever. The operative replies that he'll leave the world saving to everyone else when he thinks that they can do the job. He then orders Aaron to get the plane to supersonic speeds and lock everything down. They need to get to Aquaman. I love these little peeks into the lives of the others. These are neat. And again, it's another tension-packed, action-filled sequence. It kind of combines the paces of the previous 2 scenes, actually. This one has the frenetic action of Kahina's chase and Prisoner's fight with the slow build-up of the slow haunting attack on Prisoner. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, doing this kind of here's Kahina, here's Prisoner, and then combine their tones for the operative, but it's still pretty neat. Obviously, from what we can see here, out of all of the others, the operative appears to be the brains. He is dressed the most like a spy, and we see here that he's the one who acts the most like it as well. His costume is designed for blending into shadows. I would bet that his goggles probably allow for night vision, and he's got all kinds of pouches, packets, or small combat knives littering his uniform. This is a man who needs to be ready for anything. Even his Atlantean artifact grants him a complementing power to open things that are locked, the perfect super tool for a spy. I like the fake out as well, right before the reveal of the operative's age. Inside the suit, when you're just looking at the operative in costume, he looks fit and trim, so it would be easy to assume that the younger man was the operative and that his grandfather was the one providing support. But nope, it is the exact opposite, and I think that's kind of cool. The grandson Aaron does make a comment that the suit is only going to keep him moving for so long, which makes it sound like the suit maybe has some light Iron Man-esque qualities to it. Like, maybe they just enhance his overall strength, speed, and mobility. I would be very surprised if a man of the operative's age could really smash through a wall on his own, like we are shown him doing. But if the suit is augmenting his strength, then sure, I'll give him credit for that. That makes sense. We also learn, thanks to the design choices of the living room, that this is a man of refined tastes. This is not a place of action filled with weapons and equipment, although I am sure that there's a closet with that stuff somewhere. No, this is a library filled with knowledge, and it is equipped with desks and reading lamps. It immediately makes me feel like the operative is from an older, established British family with like a long history and upper-class structure. Even the fact that his grandson is helping emphasize that idea to me, that maybe this isn't just like a hobby for him, this is a family mission. It's a legacy. Maybe. Finally, we also see that the operative is tough as nails. He seems absolutely unconcerned with the fact that he was just shot. Even once he is safely aboard the plane and has escaped, it's not like he takes time to patch himself up. He doesn't even tell Aaron that he needs patched up. He just tells him to get moving. They have work to do. The injury be damned. So he's stubborn, which seems to be the real unifying trait of every member of the others. Anyways, we then return to Shin and Mara. She's finally set him down after his big reveal that Arthur killed Black Manta's dad in retaliation for the killing of his own father. However, Mara doesn't want to believe Shin. He already betrayed Arthur and his father, exposed them to the public against their wishes, and then he hired Black Manta to attack them. Clearly, she cannot trust him. Shin asks her who she can trust, and Mara replies that she knows that she can trust Arthur. He would have told her if he really did kill Black Manta's father. Shin argues that just isn't true. Didn't Arthur hide the existence of the others from her? Didn't he hide Yawara? This whole chapter of his life that he has kept a secret from her? Arthur, he says, is not the man that you think he is. Across the world, in Germany, Aquaman and Black Manta start fighting. Aquaman actually starts the fight. He attacks Manta first. As he presses in, he demands to know what Manta wants. Black Manta's reply is simple. I want everything that you have, because you took everything from me. While the pair are fighting, Yawara checks on Prisoner. She tells him about Kahina and how Manta already has the Seal of Clarity. Prisoner is lucky to be alive. He hesitates in response to that, and Yawara seems to remember his desire to die. Or maybe you're unlucky, she says, thinking about it. Anyway, they rush off to keep Aquaman from killing Black Manta, at least before he tells them why he wants the relics so badly. Back at the fight, Aquaman tackles Manta into a river. As they wrestle, Arthur's mind flashes back to that fateful night, and Dr. Shin narrates to Mara. In the back of Arthur's mind, we see his last memory of his father in a hospital bed. He tells his son one last thing that he must do, and Arthur listens with tears in his eyes. That night, the night of the funeral, Arthur hunted down Manta's boat. He climbed on board, anger in his heart. A dark figure shot Arthur in the shoulder from behind with a short harpoon. Without thinking, assuming that it was Black Manta, Arthur rushed the attacker, grabbed the figure by the neck, and then he snapped it. But it wasn't Black Manta at all. It was his father. The horror of his mistake is clear on Arthur's face as he reels. But as he wrestles with this terrible act, Manta returned from his dive. He saw his father dead in Arthur's hand. And from then on, Arthur and Black Manta were locked in a cycle of vengeance and hate. In the actual fight going on now, Manta activates his heat beams, blasting Aquaman at point-blank range. He is actually forced out of the water, blasted back onto the streets of Heidelberg, Germany. Manta follows, his eyes glowing red. Yawara approaches Aquaman, noting that he's been burned. Aquaman pulls off what remains of his metal shirt. Yeah, he's upped his optics, but the charge doesn't last long. Prisoner approaches next, saying that they need Manta alive, but Aquaman cuts him off. Black Manta is his. He will decide when and where Manta dies. But the villain aims a short harpoon. Oh, is that right? He fires, and his aim is so precise that the spear manages to snag Yawara's golden bauble off of her neck without cutting her. Manta pulls on the return cable, and the harpoon and its treasure snap back to him. He holds the orb up. You think any of this is a surprise to me? You are all doing exactly what I knew you would, Manta whispers. And my revenge is just beginning. We see another memory of Arthur slashing Manta across the face with a piece of fishing equipment. In a flash of golden light, Black Manta vanishes, just as Aquaman's trident passes through his form. And he's gone. Black Manta then reappears in the home of Dr. Shin. The two men stare at each other and say each other's name. Is that a greeting between two conspirators? Or just an acknowledgement between two men who have history? Well, we'll find out in a week, won't we? So the back half of this issue is mostly fight scene, and it is glorious fight scene. Penciler Ivan Reis goes all out with 2-page splashes, wide panels, and hard-hitting punches between Aquaman and Manta. This fight does eat up the remaining pages of the comic incredibly quickly, but it also goes to show how much these two men hate each other. We've seen Aquaman fight previously, and it's almost always defensively. Think about him stopping the car chase back in issue 1. He didn't even attack the men who were in the car until one of them opened fire. When he met the creatures from the trench, Aquaman tried to communicate with them multiple times as opposed to harming them. And when he was rescuing their to-go bag of humanity, Aquaman and Mera didn't even try to fight the creatures, just take the humans and go. Johns has established that Aquaman is a defensive rescuer type of hero. He is not a vindictive hunter. But here, with Black Manta, this is personal. Aquaman does not show up here in order to save Prisoner. He comes here to kick Manta's butt. He starts this fight, attacking Manta first, laying into him with body blows and tackles. And interestingly, Manta fights him off, but not so that he can rally his strength or deploy some kind of strategy against Aquaman. No. His goal here isn't killing Prisoner, or even killing Arthur. It's stealing Yawara's orb. Manta is up to something more than just a fight. But Aquaman is so caught up in his old wounds with Manta that he misses that fact. Yawara seems to note it, and Prisoner tries to tell Arthur to keep it in mind, but he is so angry that it just doesn't matter to him. Hopefully, that won't cost Arthur another friend. The flashback scenes in this issue, detailing Arthur's murder of Black Manta's dad, are not colored in the beautiful soft tones that the previous flashbacks are. These flashbacks are all red with anger, like a bloody haze coating Arthur's memories. They are still uninked, maintaining the thematic idea of the original flashbacks, but Rod Reis's coloring here shifts to match Arthur's mood. I really like this. It obviously helps set the flashbacks apart from what is going on in the modern day sequences, but it also perfectly communicates what is running through Arthur's head as he fights Manta. He is remembering the anger of his father's death. He is remembering the shame and horror of killing the wrong man. He can feel the snap of his neck in his hands, and he remembers the terrified look on Manta's face. Arthur killed the wrong man, but it's not like he would have time to apologize. Manta attacked him back, and then they've been fighting each other ever since. That's a potent mix of emotions. Rage, shame, fear, horror. And I can't help but wonder if Manta feels the same as Arthur. Did he feel guilt over the accidental death of Tom Curry? Did he even know that Curry died, actually? When he actually met Arthur for the first time, did he regret taking the job like Mera did? She was sent to assassinate Arthur, and she learned that he was a good guy. Did Manta show up to collect Arthur's blood and then realize this guy's just a kid? He's just a teenager? Maybe what I'm doing is wrong? Or was there just too little action between the two of them to make a difference? God, that's good stuff. And there's so much more to explore between those two characters. Oh. Next time, the others finally get together and close in on Black Manta. But Manta hunts something that shouldn't exist. Something that will give him the power to shake the world. Will the others come together to stop him? Or will infighting lead to their downfall? Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 26.7 of Aquaman, Indiana Manta, and the Seventh Relic of Atlantis. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.